What's going on, everybody? We're here to talk about Star Wars Andor, the latest Star Wars series on Disney Plus. I'm going to be sitting here with Jose Espinel today. Super excited to talk with you about this, my guy. This has been an awesome show so far, just right off the bat. I want to say that. And I've been talking a lot about the mark. Like, you and I have been talking a lot about this thing called the mark, and the mark is on par or more on par with what original Star Wars was, and not in a way that like mimics the original trilogy or New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, but in this way that's like you feel like it comes from the same type of creators, right? Or that same level of quality as that original trilogy, but it's also its own new story.
Right.
To me, this is it. And to me, so far, this has hit the mark. And we're here finally. And now it's up to Lucasfilm. I mean, this will be a discussion for another time of what they do moving forward, but now it's time for them to take this and just ramp up and not stop, because now there's a precedence that's been set with the show. And what you need to do is you need to take this and you need to use this as precedence, and nothing else can be worse than this, because you are there again. They're right at the mark. They can't be worse than this now. Everything has to improve from here. And the best Star Wars Disney has put out so far. This is where I'm at, and I think I was blown away by this show, man. I mean, and we could talk spoilers here, by the way, just so you know. Everybody knows that we are going to get into spoilers. Jose, man, but really quick, what was your thoughts on the overall show?
I mean,
or the 3 episodes, obviously, but
like you said, pre this show coming out, I had high hopes for this show, and after watching it, it definitely has hit the mark. Like, this is the best thing that Disney has put out for Star Wars. I mean, it's like, honestly, it's mind-blowing. I mean, and each episode just improves.
It's better and better.
Like each episode is one up from the previous, and I hope that they continue to do that. I think they will, obviously. Like, this show is just incredible, and I've enjoyed watching every single episode with you. Honestly, it was great.
Yeah, dude, every character is compelling. There's no performance in this show that is questionable to me. Like, all their performances are
even Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Right, they're awesome, and you guys who've seen it will know what we're talking about for sure. There's these 2 guys, we call them Tweedledee and Tweedledum from the Empire, and I think you guys will know who we're talking about. Absolutely, and they created this partnership, and it's a cool dynamic because, and this is part of why the show works, is because it makes you care about every little person and every little detail, right? But like, you got this dynamic of the guy who he wants to be great, but you could see in his outer shell that he sucks, right? Like, he's douchey, but in his outer shell you could see he's frightened, and he's just a big pussy. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, to put it the way you just did, I mean, absolutely, because and on the opposite end of that, you got who we are calling Tweedledum, who's the heavier guy in the Empire. Not to body shame, but he's the heavier guy, and he has this outer shell of being a hard ass, but the show just lets you know deep down he's just as much of a pussy as the other guy, in my opinion, right? So you have that happening with it. It's a cool dynamic. And then you have Biggs, right? Who's the girl who I found to also be compelling here, who's helping Cassian in his every move in the show, and she immediately is put in a rough position because the guy that she's with, right? She told Cassian, or she told him that Cassian was from Kunara, right? Or was it Kunari? Kunari. So she told the guy that Cassian's from Kunari, and he asked her in the beginning, does he know about any of this? And we find out, like, by the time the 3rd episode comes around, like, he knows, and he knew everything the whole time, right? Or there was definitely things that she held from him, but he knew about Kunari and all that. And Kunari, as set up by Fiona Shaw's character in that 2nd episode when they were getting to that tiff, Kunari, you're not supposed to know. Nobody's supposed to know that he was from Kunari, because you give that away, then their whole identity is just given away. They're thieves. And Fiona Shaw is great in the show, by the way, when she was the reckoning line, where she was like, that's what a reckoning sounds like, and then she's describing to them like this scenario that's not going to go well for the Empire, right? And I love this, that she's playing them while she's kind of being held hostage in this room by them, and it's great. And she's fantastic when she was setting all that up. And I love that they kept telling her to shut up. And then finally, she said the one thing that got them intrigued, right? This is just one of my favorite moments. And then they said, and then what happens? And then she just shuts up.
Oh my God, that was the best.
It was perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And she is just unbelievably phenomenal in the show. Like, and it's, you're right, man. Every episode's gotten better. And the reason why, comparing this to other shows that they've done, every episode drives the story. Like every episode, nothing feels like it's wasted. It all drives the story. All the characters, everybody, it's all important. And when I sat there and I read ages ago, right back in 2015, when I read those Star Wars Aftermath novels by Chuck Wendig, I was like, this would make a fantastic show. And while that's a completely different story, different timeline, the tone, the structure
is the same.
This is it. I've been looking and waiting for this, and it's here, and it's everything. It's the potential I knew Star Wars could be, just didn't know if it ever would be. And even though I had faith in this show, it still managed to blow my expectations out of the water with its every moment. How on the edge of your seat were you through this? Like,
oh my gosh, like so on the edge. Like,
yeah.
The tension that the episodes always brought in certain scenes. I mean, obviously it had its comedic effects, which I really did enjoy too. But it did just always have me on the edge of the seat, wondering what's gonna happen next, what's gonna happen to this character, what's gonna happen to this character, like what are they gonna do, and all this other stuff. Like it was just honestly mind-blowing. And the fact that this was all location is just phenomenal. Honestly, I love it.
That plays into it too, the fact that it is shot so incredibly well. Like it is far beyond. I mean, every other Star Wars show visually pales in comparison to this one, and Tony Gilroy did a phenomenal job with that. Like, like figuring out like where to shoot, obviously, because it's all location, but also
how to shoot it.
But the thing that stood out to me most was the pilot episode. Like, I think that this is the best pilot Disney Plus, forget Star Wars, Disney Plus has had so far, because I was on board right from the jump, right when you got Cassian, and that location right there with the rain, it's so awesome, right? And it's and the way that he walks into this club, it's done in such a way, like it feels very Star Wars, but also if this was the first Star Wars thing I was ever watching, I could relate, right? This feels like something that we could see in our real world too, even though it feels very Star Wars at the same time. It's got a real raw and gritty feel to it, this entire opening, and everything that's happening, it's all done on a very human level, right? It's a very straight level, so there's nothing there. And again, obviously it's not, but if this was the first Star Wars thing I was ever watching, then I'd be able to keep up with it in every step of the way, which I think is also the job of the storyteller too when making Star Wars projects. You have to please the fans, but you also have to be on a level where everybody can keep up. And there's nothing about this yet that's been, and I mean this in a good way, I mean this as a compliment to the show, nothing about this yet has been deep lore in the sense that like when you're watching Mandalorian, right? Like, and they drop Ahsoka Tano, like you have to have seen Clone Wars and Rebels to get that, like why that's so exciting.
Right.
There's nothing about this show, and it doesn't need it. That's a testament to the storytelling. I don't care if Obi-Wan or Cal Kestis show up in this. I just want to see this story. And I know that in the other shows, people would have called me crazy. I don't care who shows up. If I said that about the other shows, I don't care who shows up. But the other shows, and I don't mean this as a negative thing. It is kind of a negative thing on the other shows, but like, it's not that I hate any of those shows. It's just their storytelling is set up to be a little bit more fan servicey, a little bit more inside baseball. This show is on a level of quality that you don't need all the inside baseball stuff, or it's there, it's planted where you can point out little things here and there and be like, I know that because I know Star Wars, but you don't have to be like inside baseball with all the Star Wars stuff, right? And to me, and as a inside baseball Star Wars fan, I'm fine with that. That's a testament to the storytelling and the quality. Like, where are you at? Do you think the show like requires fan service? Like, at no point at any point are you waiting for like a cameo from somebody from something?
No,
like,
of course not. No, obviously, because since this is like a prequel to a movie, in no way, shape, or form am I expecting a big character to pop up in the show, because like you said, the storyline doesn't need it. It's doing amazingly with the characters that we have right now, and I just want to continue with these characters and just grow deeper feelings for these characters and bigger connections with these characters that we have. For example, Skarsgård's character, I'm ready to connect more with his character and get to know more about his character.
It lays just enough mystery, right? Because it's around him that you want to know, okay, who's he connected to? I mean, we can assume as Star Wars fans he's connected to probably the Rebellion in some way, shape, or form. Right. But I still don't know. And again, it goes back to, if you were somebody new, hadn't seen Star Wars before, it's laid out in a way that you're like, yeah, who's this guy? Like, I'll even look at Rogue One, right? Like, and this is the cool thing about this show. Because you look at Rogue One, and Rogue One, it's a good movie. I think anybody who hadn't seen Star Wars can really enjoy that movie. But even the overall plot of that movie, it has to do with the Death Star, and if you haven't seen the original Star Wars, you're not going to care about the Death Star, right? So you're not, in which case you're going to feel slightly disconnected to the Rogue One storyline if you haven't seen Star Wars before. And I always try to think of these projects as somebody who hasn't seen Star Wars before, and that's kind of how I always look at them, because there are going to be new people jumping on with Andor. There's going to be people jumping on with Mandalorian. And so I always try to think of them too, because I want new fans in Star Wars. I want these shows to get people in. So every time there's a project, I think of it through that lens, and which is why sometimes I end up having problems with some of these things, because I'm like, I kind of wonder from the perspective of somebody who's not been into Star Wars before how this will play. This show, again, from the jump, you're relating to it.
I was gonna say, this show is the only one that they've done so far where you don't have to watch any of the other Star Wars. It's true. You can just start with the show, and you don't need to have watched anything else from Star Wars. And I compare it to House of Dragon. You don't have to watch Game of Thrones to understand what's happening in House of Dragon. Right. Because it's a prequel to Game of Thrones that took place like almost 200 years before Game of Thrones. And I guess, the same thing would probably be true for Rings of Power. You don't have to have watched any really of the Lord of the Rings shows to really get into into Lord of the Rings, because Rings of Power is a prequel.
Of course, I haven't seen it, but I would assume, that's hope. That'd be the goal of it, though. That would be the goal of Rings of Power.
That's why I said I assume that it would be the same for Rings of Power, because it's a prequel. You wouldn't really have to watch any of the Lord of the Rings movies to get in. You could start with Rings of Power and then get into the Lord of the Rings movies if you like the show. Same thing with House of Dragon. You could watch House of Dragon if you like it, then you could get into Game of Thrones. The same thing here with this Andor show. You can start with this series and then get into all the other stuff.
Yeah, and I also think the other thing, like going back to your Game of Thrones analogy, even just Game of Thrones alone, you can get into Game of Thrones without having read the Game of Thrones books, right? Right. And I think in that way, but yet it's this whole other world with a lot that you have to build upon. And in House of the Dragon as well, you're correct on that. But I think that this show does what those shows did so successfully in the same way, is it expands the world for new audiences and even gives old audiences something new to look at. And on the same hand, of course, it still feels very Star Wars on the same hand. Like there's still enough there that it feels incredibly Star Wars. It's like there's nothing about this show that makes me question whether or not this takes place in universe. It definitely does. Like
same thing with House of Dragon. It's very Game of Thrones feel. Like it doesn't feel out of place at all. It feels very Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and as a geeky Star Wars fan here, it excites me knowing the things that are going to be introduced, because we are going to get Mon Mothma. That's one thing that we know we're going to get from the trailers.
The girl, the lady. Yeah.
But that excites me because this is obviously going to be a show again where people aren't going to have to know who Mon Mothma is to understand why that cameo is so exciting. It'll obviously naturally build her, because we're going to really get the Mon Mothma origin through this show. That's what's going to be so great about it. And it won't be the focus though. Like I trust this show enough to know that when there is Mon Mothma, that little, maybe that one little touch of fan service that's within Mon Mothma, I trust the show enough to not steer the focus too much toward the fan servicey element of it. Like, it's still going to make sense within the story, I would imagine, of what's been, of what's unfolding. Like, everything that's happened has been important to this unfolding story in front of us, and it never stops on that. That scene, really quick, one standout again, because we are talking spoilers. The scene where first of all, where the Empire is all kind of lining up, and we thought it was going to be like the standoff situation, right? Toward the end. And Cassian and Skarsgård's character have to get away, which I think he's just known as the buyer right now, right? I don't think we have a name.
Yeah, we have a name. Because I mean, Andor asked him multiple times, and he never answered, so we just know him as the buyer, yeah. Who's
going to buy this box from Andor that he stole from the Empire, right? And so the buyer is... they have to get away. They're in this situation that they kind of got caught in together. Like, they didn't really plan to be in this situation together, but they have to work together to find a way out. And it feels very real and visceral when they get stuck in this situation, and every moment of that is on the edge of your seat, and you're listening to that background. The score, by the way, is outstanding, and I think like Ludwig Göransson's one of the greatest composers of all time, and he does Mandalorian. I don't know,
and he did the Boba Fett as well.
Right. Well, part of it, he did the theme. Yeah. He did the theme.
Yeah.
And some of the other stuff, but part of it, yeah. But Ludwig's great. I don't know who does the score, but I think it just works better for Star Wars, like, or what the show is.
In that scene that you're talking about where we thought there was gonna be a standoff, I like the silence, that once the
silence came,
and then the silence, like that had me on the edge of my seat. It was like, wow.
Well, because that set up that awesome shot where you just saw the part of the barrel of Andor's gun, right? It, like, just come into the frame, and that got us so excited. Like, and that you don't have. That's my point. Like, you don't have to be a crazy inside baseball Star Wars fan to get excited about that scene. It's just a good scene. Like, I do feel like where the other shows kind of falter is they do rely heavily on this is a Star Wars show. This show is not relying heavily on this is a Star Wars show. It's just going to be a great show. Like, we are making great content that just happens to take place within the Star Wars universe. And to me, it works on that level. Like, it just works on a very street level, very human level.
So yeah, I just the guy who does the score for Andor, he also did the score for Don't Look Up and Cruella.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nicholas Brettel.
All right.
Brettel, or Nicholas Brettel, however you pronounce his name.
Either way, he's phenomenal. Like, in this, the work he does in the show, I think the score just elevates it so much and constantly. It's not like this. It's not the original music, and that's like, I heard a lot of people complain about they don't use the original John Williams themes in the other show. Well, if it's a score that works, you won't be missing that John Williams score. And like, I'm never at any point feeling like use that John Williams score. It's just not been warranted.
This also isn't like really a John Williams, I guess, Star Wars project, if that makes sense. This is kind of just like a spin-off to a movie that was, I guess, kind of, it wasn't, because Rogue One isn't really even technically part of the whole John Williams, Star Wars, the movie.
Yeah, but neither is like Mandalorian or Obi-Wan, but people for some reason still feel like it needs to be in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's what I mean, is like those kinds of shows don't need the John Williams score because they're not technically part of that. So I like the fact that,
I agree with you. I just think that the reason that people want it so bad is because those shows rely heavily on the fact that they are Star Wars shows. That's kind of how they get by, in my opinion, like the other shows.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't worry about it too much. It's in the Star Wars universe, and it's just telling a story within that universe that is compelling, and it's worrying about that more so. Like, how can we make a great story? It doesn't need fan service. I'm not clamoring for Ahsoka Tano to show up, or Cal Kestis or anybody like that.
Neither.
Right. And I just want to see what happens to Cassian. I want to see next week because I want to know what happens to Cassian. And so the show is, by its very definition, yes, it's within Star Wars, but we're telling a story about Andor. We're telling a story about Cassian.
Right.
At the end of the day, and that's what's making it so great. And yeah, the politics, they'll come into it, but they'll be done in such a way, I can already predict that, like, even new Star Wars viewers are going to be like, I want to know more about the politics of Star Wars. I don't want to. I'm not turned off by it because I don't understand what that is, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are gonna feel that way, or feel that way about the other Star Wars shows. This is basically going to be the introduction to Star Wars politics. Yeah, right, yeah, really.
Because this happens before Rogue One, which happened before A New Hope.
Well, at least the politics within. If we're watching it in chronological order, this would technically, yes, be the introduction to the politics of the Empire, right? The Imperial politics. We had the politics of the Republic already, but now we're going to get into the politics of the Empire.
Right.
And the Rebellion too, I would imagine, like, is going to play a part in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, I just love that this is just concerned about making something great. I think that's what's made it work so far. I don't know, what to you stands out. Like, what do you think is really making this work for you, like, as opposed to the other shows?
Well, for one, I guess, you know, the characters that we're just getting introduced to a bunch of new, like literally every single character, someone new that we've never really heard of, seen of. The storyline as well with Cassian Andor. I mean, I've always wanted to, ever since Rogue One, I've always wanted to know about his, you know, life before
I agree.
The rebellion. So that's really driving it forward. The intensity of this show, the cinematography as well of this show is just really, really driving this show forward for me in such a way that I haven't seen it done in any other Disney Star Wars project.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Prequels, by their very nature, this is the other thing that's impressive, because it is such a prequel to Rogue One directly, right? But prequels, by their very nature, are bad ideas, because there's all this expectation about how the story went. Like, sequels are easier to do, in my opinion, because
you just pick up from where you left off with the previous one.
Yeah, because I think you have Tony Gilroy, who took Rogue One out of development hell when Gareth Edwards kind of drove it into the ground. He picked it back up and fixed the movie to make the movie we know today. Because you have Gareth Edwards consistently on the show, I think that, not Gareth Edwards, I'm sorry, Tony Gilroy consistently on the show, I think that it feels so consistent with that vision, and it's constantly, you're right, like, it is all about Andor and trying to develop him and figure out how did that lead to Rogue One, and you're constantly intrigued by that idea. And one of the things I love about it is, like, there was that one scene where something fell and almost hit him, and I was like, oh, like, I know Cassian's not gonna die, but it's so good at scene work.
He got shot. He also actually did get hit by a chain that was flying.
That's right.
He kind of got, like, knocked down. So yeah, I mean, at the whole time, like, you know, he's not gonna die, obviously, because the show's about him.
But it still puts you on the edge.
You're like, exactly. You're still, like, on the edge of your seat, wondering, like, oh my god, what the hell's gonna happen?
That's just how good they build the scenes and the tension, and it's just great scene work. That's all I could say about the show. It just constantly, and the backstory. You get this backstory for Cassian as a kid, and which makes you care even more. And the moment I realized how important this was going to be is when Fiona Shaw finds him on the Imperial ship, right? She finds him on that ship, and then they cut from that. There's this part they cut from that, her grabbing Cassian Andor, and then they cut
to him like going into the ship with Skarsgård's character.
Right, but then they show Fiona Shaw with one single tear.
Oh my god, that shit was... Oh.
But if you don't have that backstory for how she found him, you don't understand that. But because you did get that little bit of backstory, now you can just, your mind can just fill in the gaps between what happened then to now. That's the other thing I like about this. Nothing is spoon-fed to you. There's enough ambiguity there that your imagination can kind of run wild with the show, and I think that's great too. But that backstory is wonderful. You understand where Cassian comes from. You understand a lot more about why Kendari is so secretive, and just what happened to him, and how did he get here, you know, and that's perfection to me. This show, I don't have a problem with it yet. Like I would love to be able to not love it, but like usually when I watch a Star Wars show, it's like, yeah, this was questionable. I kind of want to see where that goes. There's none of that here. It's like I'm on board. I trust the show to take me to where it's naturally gonna go, and I don't feel like any episode is gonna let me down. Like I have that much confidence in it, even though it's a Disney Plus show. In its first 3 episodes, it managed to make me believe that this is not going to be bad. Like this is going to be good.
In Gilroy we trust, honestly.
There's a plan here in place, and I love it. And the performances are outstanding again. Diego Luna he's getting a lot more free reign to play here than he did in Rogue One, and you're really seeing the chops on this guy. He's an amazing actor, and if he wasn't him behind this performance, I don't think I could be as compelled and attached to this character as
look, man, the Latinos are bringing it out for Star Wars, baby. Let's go.
Absolutely, dude. All right, guys, look, that was kind of our big overview spoiler discussion of Andor. I speak for both of us. It's the best Star Wars yet from Disney. And
100%.
This is again the potential where I saw Star Wars going, or hopefully going, and they met it and then some. So it's unbelievable. I am so happy we have this, and I can't wait for next week, man.
Dude, I can't wait. I
can't wait for next week. It's going to be insane, and I think that the show's just only going to get better from here. It really feels that way.
Every episode is just going to be a one-up from the previous one. Honestly, they're just going to keep just impressing us, keeping us on the edge of our seat.
Yeah,
I mean, it's gonna be great.
Let me ask you something just really quick. I just wanted to ask you this really quick question before we get out of here. Look, does this not feel to you like it's on a different network altogether? Like it doesn't feel like something Disney Plus would have made, like to me anyway.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it would be something done before Disney took over Star Wars. Yeah, for sure. Like it feels like something that Lucasfilm would have put out.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what streaming service it would have been then.
Yeah,
but it definitely doesn't feel like, because I mean, looking back at, to me honestly, even like Mandalorian doesn't really feel like something Disney Plus would have put out, if I'm being honest. But obviously Boba Fett and Obi-Wan kind of do to me feel like something Disney would have put out. But yeah, no, these like Mandalorian and Andor, these two they just don't seem like something Disney Plus would put out. Honestly, it feels very Lucasfilm to me.
Well, this one to me feels even more, there's something very
100%,
there's something very adult about this show to me. Like even though it's not like F-bombs and things like that, like there's just the tone is just so adult, right? They managed to like give this very adult tone. I think there's enough in there that kids can still watch it and like it. It's just and it's not like inappropriate for children or anything. I mean,
right, no,
there's violence, but like there's not like gore and blood. I mean, kids can still probably watch this and have a good time. There's like droids and stuff for kids, and there's definitely,
look, man, Disney would never put out anything that's not appropriate for kids. Come on now.
Yeah, no, I mean honestly, like kids can still watch it and enjoy it. I just think that the adults who are paying the bills are going to be more on board for this than any of the shows they've done so far, because it speaks to us, and it's the storytelling is done in such a way where it respects the fact that we are adults and we can pay attention to the story and everything unfolding. And I think this is where I've wanted Star Wars to go. I'm a very satisfied, very very happy customer right now of Disney Plus, because this is amazing, man. This is amazing. All right, dude. Look, all right, guys. Look, that's our thoughts on Andor. This is probably the longest thoughts on segment we've ever done here, but I'm happy about that. This is a testament to how great the show really is, and I want to thank Jose. Thank you, man, for being here today and making the time to watch this with me, and also just have this really great discussion on it. But yeah, guys, before we get going, give us a hand, help us out, would you? Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, hit the bell. I have been Don Martino, and this has been Mr. Jose Espinel, and we will talk to you guys later.